Self-sabotage is you getting exactly what you want and you just don't realize why. Everything I've ever written is like a letter to my younger self. Writing was my way of processing, was my way of understanding myself. You have to stop taking criticism from people you wouldn't take advice from. You don't have a right to the cards that you think you should have been dealt, but you have a responsibility to play the hell out of the ones you were given.
So a lot of people know what they want to do, but they're stuck in inaction. Okay. And so I want to know from your perspective, what is keeping people frozen and what are small, powerful shifts that they can make immediately?
Sometimes I think when we feel stuck, it's not that we're actually stuck, it's that we're taking a pause and it's intentional. It's not always time to move forward. Sometimes, like, we don't know what we don't know. Sometimes we need to gather more information. Sometimes we need to do soul searching. Sometimes we just need a break. And I feel like in these moments when we feel the most stuck, it's really a call to pause and to ask yourself, what do I really want? What do I want to be next? What am I not seeing? And I think that it's really not a lack of momentum or sometimes even willpower or motivation. I think a lot of the time it's a lack of clarity.
So how do you then go about being self-reflective?
For me, obviously, it's writing and journaling and reading has always kind of been my method, my way. I know everyone has their own process, but I think that journaling for me is so important. One, because it kind of holds up a big mirror to yourself, right? So you're kind of able to recognize your patterns, but also you're able to organize your feelings. It's Kydland's Law, which is a problem written down is half solved. And I find that to be true. It's like, could you even just clearly state, what you're stuck on or what you're feeling right now in this moment? Like that will get you halfway there, I think.
I completely agree. And I'm also big on journaling. I have been for years. And I keep saying, I think journaling makes you a much more self-aware person.
I think so too.
And, in times where we're stuck or we're spiraling, I feel like putting pen to paper just allows you to kind of logic with yourself a little bit sometimes.
Yes.
And also, like, sometimes it's just about getting it out. And then you read it back or you think about it and you're like, wait, that's not true.
Yeah, and it gives you this objectivity.
So talk to me about self-sabotage, because obviously people do it here and there. What is something people misunderstand about it? And what does healing from self-sabotage look like?
Self-sabotage is the presence of two coexisting but conflicting needs. One is conscious and the other is unconscious. And so, I actually once saw someone describe self-sabotage this way, and I was so jealous because I was like, I wish I had come up with that myself. But they said self-sabotage is you getting exactly what you want and you just don't realize why. And so when we're in, a moment of almost unconsciously holding ourselves back, there is a reason. There is some sense of comfort or safety or need that we're not aware of that we're actually giving to ourselves. And in my book, The Mountain Is You, I had written about, you can really look at self-sabotage actually as a profound act of self-love. And then once you recognize it as that, you can also say, okay, but I'm ready to actually evolve past this and love myself in a bigger way. And that bigger way would be finding a healthier way to meet the unconscious need, so that it kind of frees up space for you to move forward with the conscious ones.
So then how do you even identify when you're self-sabotaging? Because a lot of the times people do it and they don't even know what they're doing,
A lot of patterning. It's like, I always come up on the same feeling. When this moment, arises, I always feel, anxious. I always feel worried. This is when, negative, intrusive thoughts start creeping in and start pulling me away from the opportunities that are actually reaching out for me. And I think that in The Mountain Is You, again, there's a part where I talk about upper limits. And that's Gay Hendricks' term from The Big Leap. And essentially what he calls an upper limit is your body's unconscious tolerance for feeling good. And what he says is that when you surpass that limit, you will unconsciously sabotage to return to your comfortable baseline, and you won't even know that you're doing it. So I think that moments of big change are also a time to, really be mindful of, staying clear and staying present and knowing that anything new, no matter how good, is going to be uncomfortable until it's also familiar. But also, anytime you're changing your life or going through any life change period, you're going through an identity shift. You're going through a self-worth shift. You're going through a self-image shift. You're going through a self-belief shift. So you can't do the work on the surface without also kind of doing the underbelly of it at the same time. I think they both have to go together.
So, you have this quote from The Mountain Is You, which I read years ago, and I really loved the book. And I'm so excited that we're finally getting to chat. But you said, if I'm not wrong, your new life is going to cost you your old one. And I thought that was really, really profound because it's true. Like, I think when people go through periods of change that kind of they're being thrust into, you almost grapple with holding on to your old self while feeling pushed to kind of enter into this new realm, if you will.
Yeah.
How do you make peace with that?
Every time you say yes to something, you say no to something else. And I think it's coming into enough self-awareness to know, what am I willing to sacrifice? What am I willing to say no to? And for, a lot of people who are on any kind of journey of growth or becoming or self-reflection, the first thing you're going to have to sacrifice is your comfort zone, or the perceived comfort zone, what you are used to, what feels okay. And I believe that's because there is something inside of you that is telling you there is a life outside of this, that's asking you to meet it there. But you're going to have to really defy your own limits to make it. And I think that it takes a lot of courage, more than I think most people ever find, to be totally honest, to let go of what you have known, to reach for what may be.
When you first started to put your work out there, okay, whether like through your books, were you nervous?
Yeah. Oh, I get this question all the time. And I, or people ask kind of, like, you're so vulnerable all the time. Like, is that... It's funny because after all these years now, it feels weird if I'm not doing it. I'm like, I haven't done something in a while, I should. But at the beginning, yes, I think there was a fear of, what will people think of me, or people close to me think I'm weird, or I don't even know what exactly it was. But I really, what I was creating was so true to me that I almost felt, I think, proud of it enough that I was able to kind of override that. But yeah, I remember that really distinctly at the beginning, thinking it is scary when you start.
When did you first start to put your work out there?
13 years ago, almost 13 years ago. I know, right? I was just actually like figuring out that number, and I was like, I'm getting old.
You're not getting old.
I was really young.
Yeah.
I started writing in my late teens. At least I always loved. And I started really, writing in my late teens, but I was like 20, 21 when I started like writing, blogging, doing the whole thing. Obviously, it's grown and evolved and taken different shapes and forms in all the years since. But I almost think that I kind of had that on my side as well, which is, you're kind of, young and, you're wearing your heart on your sleeve in a way that, I remember when I was in like elementary school, I did gymnastics, and I remember that my coach would like if we could start backflipping. I think it was like third, fourth grade, somewhere around that time. And I remember her saying, once you get a little too old, you're going to be so aware of what could go wrong, you won't be able to flip. But if you learn to do it when you're younger, you'll be able to continue doing it even if you do know the risks involved. But it's like it's when you start that kind of keeps you like adaptable to it. So I think that in my career I had that on my side, which is I started at a time when I was open enough to it that now it feels like second nature. But I'm not so sure I would feel that way if I started now.
I actually really love that analogy. And by the way, I agree with this because I started skiing at an older age. And I feel like, when I started to learn, I'd see these like little kids on the slopes and they're like so far, like they're so close to the ground and they had no fear. And so I feel like it's like that with gymnastics as well. Like when you learn a skill when you're younger, you just like are better at it and you're not as scared anymore.
Correct. Yeah.
So it's like a good analogy for life. But I will say in your 20s, I feel like you are the most kind of, I guess, afraid of what people will say.
Yes.
Like right now in my 30s, I don't give a shit. Like, do not care.
Yes. Yeah, and I think it's because in your 20s, you are figuring out who you are. And so who you are feels negotiable. And it's like, I'm going to, there's this sense of like, I'm the sum of what other people think of me. And so I think the fear comes from, well, if someone disapproves or someone dislikes me, it kind of, I take that to heart and I take that to be equivalent to who I actually am. And then I think when you get older, I feel like you get clearer a little bit on like, well, this is my truth and who I am actually doesn't alter or change just because someone's perception is a certain way. I feel like that's a beautiful gift of getting older. But you're correct. In your 20s, it is the most. But I've always said this. People, would say, your 20s are like the best time of your life, and in a lot of ways, I found them to be some of the hardest.
I think that's false advertising,
Right?
truthfully. Like, of course, listen, every era has its like beauty and its fun. And like my 20s were just a completely different time of my life and I
Yeah.
treasure them. But were they the best time ever?
Right?
No.
Right?
You're like, your prefrontal cortex is barely developed. Okay.
Correct.
Like you are, I mean, you're so concerned about other people's opinions of you. I feel like your 30s are a much better time because you've kind of stepped into a more confident version of yourself.
And I feel like in your 20s, for most people, you don't know what your life is going to be as much as you do. There's so much unknown and so much variable. And I think that unknown, while exciting and sometimes I think freeing, can also be really intimidating.
I mean, you put a lot of pressure on yourself too. Like, I think that there's also this false narrative that you're supposed to have your entire life figured out in your 20s. And that is just, it couldn't be further from the truth. I feel like
Yes.
everyone in their 20s, like you step into like your late 20s and you're like, huh, so that was all a lie.
I don't think anyone has it all figured out
No.
ever. I
Yes.
think is really the thing of it.
Yeah.
Literally ever.
I mean, you're like ever evolving, but in your 20s, you're like, damn, what I do at 21, it's going to stick with me forever. I'm like, no, absolutely not. Like,
Yes.
that's insane.
Correct.
So I like, since you started to kind of, your career started to take off in your 20s, but you're also incredibly wise. And I think the things that your work that you've always put out has been, I would say, like a lot of mini lessons. So were you starting to write as you were learning these lessons yourself? Like were these things running in tandem?
Yeah. I always say this, but everything I've ever written is like a letter to my younger self. It was self-reflective first, and then I just started sharing it, and then other people, I think, something resonated, and it felt, like well, I hope at least it was kind of narrating an experience that they were privately having, because it was, experiences that I was privately having. And as I had said earlier, writing was my way of processing, was my way of understanding myself. It was also my way of making sense of things. And I think that this is important to note. When I first started journaling, I would do this thing called junk journaling, which is just, I would like take a page and just like get all of my fears out, my thoughts, whatever else. And then I would like tear it up, I didn't get rid of it. And I called it junk journaling because I always felt like I don't know, like I didn't want to, make a book of, the things I didn't want to be true. And then over time, I kind of expanded on that practice into what if I could kind of script, a reframe of this fear, of this thought, or of this thing I'm going through, literally just to make my own self feel better. And I found that to be really powerful. And part of the way that I did it was just kind of by, okay, so if the beginning is I feel really insecure, it was like I would kind of take a step out and back and be like, well, what would I tell someone what would I tell my best friend? What would my 90-year-old self tell me? And you almost kind of try to see it from a different perspective, but then it's your own voice, bringing you through. It's your own voice giving you that clarity and that love. And I feel like there's truly nothing more powerful than you giving that to you.
I love that. It's something that I've been doing for years. And I always say that, when we're going through something, I feel like oftentimes we're our harshest critics.
Yes.
And having like approaching yourself in the way that you would a best friend,
Yes.
it is so powerful because you realize that you would never say these things to your best friend.
Or even think them.
Not even think them, you know? And then also, it allows you to logic with yourself in a way as well, because when you're spiraling, I feel like it's always worst case scenario. And it's like you've made a mountain out of a molehill. I think that's the saying, right? And so if your friend was spiraling like this, it's like the real talk that you'd have as well. And like, of course, there's the empathy, but then there's also the like, okay, like, let's be real. It's probably not going to get to that, you know?
It's like learning to take that mentality inward, like for you as well. And also about, being your own worst critic. I also think nobody is thinking about you the way that you think they are.
It's true.
They're thinking about themselves and actually just as worried about themselves.
It's true. I had someone on the podcast a few weeks ago and she's like, can you tell me every Instagram story you watched yesterday? And I was like, I couldn't even tell you one. And she's like, exactly, because you don't even remember and you don't even care.
Oh, wow. I remember years ago, someone was like, do you remember what everyone wore to that party or that event? And I remember I was dumbfounded because I was like, I couldn't tell you what one person wore. I do remember who was there though. Wow, right? I remember who showed up. I remember presents. Couldn't tell you one thing. And I think I was trying to figure out what to wear and I was all stressed out about it. She's like, that doesn't, relax.
It's so interesting when you think like that. And I think over time, the idea of not caring about what other people think, it's because this lesson that I've learned that no one cares. And also,
Correct.
Even if you have the biggest fuck up of all time, what people are going to take that memory to the grave, they'll forget next week. Okay. Like, come on.
Yes. It's real. And I think that the way we live now, it's like a spotlight complex. Do you know what I mean? Like we think we're being, broadcast to the world at all times and people are noting or criticizing or paying attention I think that generally speaking, people are probably way more forgiving and loving and like praising of you than you have any idea. Like think about how you think of other people. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, oh wow, look at that.
Yeah. Yeah. And also the other thing that I've realized is that people who have bad, mean thoughts, I don't care for their opinion because
Yes.
people who are more successful than me, they would never say that about me. They'd never think that of me.
That's right. And it's you have to stop taking advice from people. No, you have to stop taking criticism from people you wouldn't take advice from.
I love
That's
that.
what it is.
I love
That's
that.
what it is. And it's also understanding, and this is tough because it requires like a lot of detachment, but it's also understanding, that's coming from something in them. And it could be applied to you, but it doesn't necessarily mean anything about you. And you don't have to internalize it to mean something about you.
Yeah, I love that. So you talk a lot about radical responsibility and how does someone move from blaming their circumstances to kind of taking responsibility and, making moves in their life?
It's unique to each person, but I think it's about you sitting down with yourself and asking yourself one question, which is, okay, what can I control? That is the question. What is in my hands? And then moving from there. And look, it's not that the things you can't control are never going to come up or never bother you or affect you. But I think honestly, your mental health is contingent upon you at least having some grasp of what is yours, and what that you can have a say in your own life.
I really love that perspective because I think when you are in kind of this victim mindset, it's like, oh, well, life dealt me this hand and like, oh, this happened and they did that to me. But I think what we were talking about, like the reframe and just kind of understanding that, yes, like life may have dealt you this hand and someone may have treated you shitty. It's like, what do you do with that?
I just saw something this morning and I wish I could quote the writer, but I can't remember who it was.
Yeah.
I just saw it this morning. It was like, you don't have a right to the cards that you think you should have been dealt, but you have a responsibility to play the hell out of the ones you were given.
I love that.
And I got chills when I read that.
I mean, literally.
Yeah.
That's incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
And it's true. I mean, you can sit there and like cry over your hand, or you can do the best that you can with what you've been dealt. And I really do think that, I mean, you see a lot of stories of people who kind of come out on top from the most challenging situations, and they weren't dealt this like amazing hand. And I mean, of course, some people were, but there's also so many examples of other people kind of really going through it and coming out the other side. And I feel like it just shows that you can play with whatever hand you're dealt.
And those people are our heroes. Those people are our idols.
Yeah.
Those people are the ones we look up to the most, I think.
It's so true. I mean, Oprah as an example.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, there's so many. Like it's pretty incredible. So I love that you kind of talk about radical responsibility and how like we're all able to kind of like, I guess, take control of what we can control. Yeah.
And that we get to have a say in our own lives.
1,000%. So if someone listening knows they're capable of more, but their environment isn't supportive of their growth, what advice do you have for them?
Well, it's two things. I know it's so boring and I know everyone says it, but it's boundaries. Boundaries and being able to separate out that's your opinion versus this is mine. This is what you are choosing to do versus what I am choosing to do. But also changing that environment however you can. If you really know it's not conducive to your growth, sometimes it is a problem, sometimes it isn't. But if that really specifically is it, I think it's either finding a way to make it healthier for you, or finding a way I kind of imagine in my head, it's like replanting a little flower that needs more sunshine and water,
Mm-hmm. How have you kind of gone on to surround yourself with people who are supportive?
So many different ways, actually. First of all, I moved cross country in my late 20s. And that wasn't even necessarily like the people environment thing. That was just, we were talking about this before we started. It was just nature, really, was really the driving factor. What was the question? I got distracted by nature.
No, I mean, listen, we all need more of it. But basically, like, how have you started to find people who are supportive of you?
Sorry, yeah. I really try to follow people who inspire me. And I really try to connect first, literally just online with people who like motivate me and fuel me, and like we have like a supportive, relationship to one another. Doing that has been life-changing. I feel like people, like wake up, and sometimes social media can be a place of a lot of comparison. And I think a lot of insecurity can be bred from there. But I like for it to be a place where I feel inspired and I feel seen and connected, and like that I'm reaching back to. So there's that. But also it's just, showing up and making friends with people who are doing the things that, even if they're not exactly what you want to be doing, but that you think are cool, and also not being shy about it, and knowing that, yes, you can be friends with them. Yes, you are invited, and not to be too in your head about it.
I love that.
Right?
Yeah, I love that. Have you always had that perspective?
No.
How did you step into it?
I think it was moving, honestly, a lot. Like I would just like reach out to people who were in those, like, hey, do you want to hang out?
It's surprising. People actually do say yes
They
more
do.
often than you'd think.
Okay, I've met some of my, to this day, best friends and longest friends doing that.
Oh, for sure.
And it's I was so in my head at the beginning, like, who would want to hang out or connect? Everyone.
Yeah.
The answer is mostly everyone. And like, it's self-sabotage, right? It's like, look, your presence actually is valued and wanted, and people do want to gather, and people do want to find, their people. They want to find you as much as you want to find them, is really what I'm trying to get at.
And I think it's so true. I'm the same way. I've moved around a lot in my life, and I think it takes the ego out of it, because what are you going to do? Be alone forever? Right. So you kind of have to learn to put yourself out there. Right. And I think you realize that more often than not, people are kinder, friendlier, more open than you think. And the more you do it, the less hard it becomes.
It feels natural now.
Yeah. And now I'm like, okay, if someone doesn't respond, like, what's the big deal? Maybe they were just busy.
That's the worst. it's like and this applies also to everything.
Yeah.
It's like you reach out and you ask. It's the worst, they don't respond. Okay.
Yeah.
But
who cares?
but if they do, even if it's not just even if it's some kind of opportunity, but if they do, the door that could be and how that could change your life. You know what I mean? Just the courage to reach out and ask. It's something that simple.
It's true. It's true. And I think so many people hold themselves back because they're just afraid of, oh, like what will the reaction be? Okay, so if it's no, so what? You can't live your life under those shackles, if you will,
that was well said.
Afraid.
Yeah, that was really well said.
So thank you. Okay, so I want to move on to some audience questions. Okay, first one, how did you know you wanted to be an author?
Yeah, this is a good question. Always loved reading and writing, but I think that when I was young, I just think it was outside of the realm of what I thought was possible. So it wasn't really like a dream particularly, but I don't know that it was actually not a dream just as much as it was just not something anyone did. So
Yeah.
that was kind of the end of it. But then I went to school for professional writing, and I wanted to do like journalism, news writing, editing. I kind of wanted to be in that world and did that for some time. But then alongside that, I was doing my writing that I, for my own self, and sharing that as well. And then that kind of took off and became its own thing. But at the beginning, like my book, 101 Essays That Will Change the Way You Think, it's just a compilation of work that was published. So I don't know if there was a moment where I was like, I want to be an author, but the love for writing was always there, and it just evolved over time. And then, what I think it really was people seemed to want to read books in a way that surprised me. And I remember this was back when like ebooks were like kind of just first a thing. I'm really aging myself now. When it was like the first Kindle had come out, and I think everyone thought, oh, that's what everyone's going to do now. But I've had found over the years that people almost more so want that, like a paperback or hardcover copy of a book. I think to have that experience, not everyone, of course, but I think that experience is almost nostalgic but grounding to them. And also, like, it's tough to read a book on a device where you can go do a million other things. So I understand that. So it almost kind of was just the way of my love of, it was the way that my love of writing kind of evolved.
I love that. Okay, the next question that I have is, there's so much overnight success. What's your advice for someone who's on the journey but feeling impatient or behind?
Oh, that book I was just talking about, 101 Essays, I think it was out for like 7 years before it really started to kind of pick up.
Really?
Yeah, I came out in 2016.
So how did it take off then?
Well, it's a funny story because it was like year after year. At the beginning, I'm from an independent publisher. I didn't have PR. I didn't have, it's just not, we didn't really do that. It was one person had a meaningful experience with it and then just kind of gave it to other people in their lives. And then also I would like post my writing online, but so it's multiple things, but it just kept growing year after year. And then it just kind of hit like a tipping point. But I think that sometimes there's a gift in that delay. And the gift for me is that all those years when nothing was happening, it was actually getting me ready for when everything would happen. And the person I am now is ready for it. The person I was then was not ready for it.
I love that reframe. That's
Right?
like, yeah, it is a really beautiful way to think about it. And I've noticed that it's the same thing in my own life where I want something so bad and it doesn't arrive in the timeline that I'd set for it in my brain. And then it arrives and I'm like, oh, like there was definitely divine timing when it came to this because it was just meant to play out this way. And I'm just a different person now. I'm able to handle it with more grace. And I don't know, like I think it's an incredible reframe that I think everyone should be thinking of, especially because we put so much pressure on ourselves around timelines.
I always say, you tell life what, but life tells you how. And part of the how is the when. But if you are committed and clear on that what and open and adaptable to the how, okay, if it's not here, it's there. If it's not this person, it's that person. And you're able to, keep moving with it, you will get there. But I feel like the timing is that big testing moment of, will you surrender, and will you allow life to show you a timing better than you probably could have planned for yourself.
Love that. Next question is, where do you find inspiration?
Nature. Nature and all the questions I have had in my life that I couldn't find answers for. So I just started making them up.
Very cool. I mean, that's why you traveled across the country for nature. It's important to your process. How do you stay creative?
Oh, it's like a muscle, I feel. So it's like working out to me, honestly. And I think that, just making time for it, committed time for it every day, even if it's just a little bit of time, kind of just keeps you going. And then it gets to a point where I feel funny if I don't do it.
Do you get writer's block ever?
Yeah, but I always take that as a cue to pause and step back, because it means that I either don't know what I'm trying to say, or I'm trying to say it in a way that's too far removed from how I would naturally think or speak. And so I try to first get clear on, okay, what's your point? What are you trying to get across? What's the big picture? And then when I'm in it, it's kind of that thing of, you just make it exist first, and then you can make it better later. But can you just get it out first without, don't worry about it being eloquent, or don't worry about it being perfect or grammatically perfect or anything. Just express what you mean, and then you can clean it up later, and that helps me a lot.
I think putting it out there is the most important thing.
Yeah.
And then you edit later.
And there's one other thing. I've kind of made an agreement with myself, which is that anything I write, I will take a pause and decide whether or not it is a book, or it goes in a book, or it gets shared. And for me, that created a safe space within myself, where it was like, I think sometimes the pressure and anxiety of trying to be creative is this feeling. Well, it's not even a feeling, it's a knowing that, that whatever you're doing is going to be seen and held by everyone. And, I think that's so overwhelming sometimes that it kind of like stops you up from even being able to do it. So that agreement I have with myself is, look, you're just going to get it all out here. We're going to work through all of this now, and then you're going to step away from it for a minute, and then go back and decide what's going to be shared or not. And that space gives me, I feel like, the creative freedom that I think I need.
That's incredible. Do you take breaks between writing books?
Yeah. But it's not like, I'm not like, 3 months, then I'll start again. So I just kind of intuitively move. And I just kind of intuitively move with it. And also, if there's an idea that I have that I'm really passionate about, I do try to execute, not like rushed, but just as quickly as I can, because I really do actually believe that ideas are visitors, and
big magic.
I really do.
Yeah.
I really do. And because I've like lived it.
I completely agree.
It's like, if you volunteer and then you don't bring it through, it's okay. It's going to go to the next person who will. So I feel like if it comes, I'm like, okay, I got it.
That's one of my favorite things that I've ever read from Elizabeth Gilbert, the ideas thing. And I quote it often because I'm like, if you don't do it, someone else will. You were just like not the right person to partner with it.
That's right.
So it's very cool that you kind of believe in that as well.
There's a beautiful Annie Dillard quote about writing too, where she says, "Give it all, give it now. Don't save what's good for another book or for later in the book. And that if you withhold, you will open your safe and find ashes."
I've heard that as well.
Yeah, and I really love that. That I return to that quote often.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Okay, last question. Have you ever thought of writing another genre?
Yes. I was just so excited. Yes. I've thought about fiction, but I'm kind of working on memoir type, but also like based on a true story. I don't know what is that, fiction? I guess that's fiction based on a true story.
Yeah.
Like it's a story from my life, but the character is a different name kind of thing. I have a few poetry books out, so I've done that and I've always loved that. But I have also always wanted to write a children's book.
Oh, I love that. And I feel like it would be a different kind of challenge, I'm sure, as well.
It is, because I've sat and thought about it.
Yeah.
And I think the challenge is you have to be so succinct You know, like you don't have paragraphs to express your sentiment. You
have to
have,
really dumb it down for kids.
yeah.
And not in a
That's true.
mean way. You know what I mean? Like it has to be really simplified because it's a different kind of communication.
And I think that the most powerful children's books speak to something that when adults read it, it reminds them of something that they once knew and forgot long ago.
For sure. I mean, you still hear of parents like reading, like these kids' books and then they're in tears.
Yeah.
And
The Giving Tree.
Yeah. Yeah. Roald Dahl's books.
Oh, God. Yeah.
There's so many. So I completely agree with you. And also, I reread Harry Potter every year. Every year. I'm like, I always take something away from this book, So I agree. I think children's books can be very profound.
Well, I'll get back to you
1,000%.
when I have an idea.
This has been amazing. Tell everyone where they can find you.
Instagram /Brianna Wiest or BriannaWiest.com for the books.
And what's your latest book that people can pick up?
Oh, that's right. I should definitely have led with that. The Life That's Waiting just came out a few months ago.
What's it about?
It's like kind of like an encyclopedia of experiences. So when you open the table of contents, it's read this when you don't know what you want. Read this when your heart is breaking and it feels like it will never heal. So it's just kind of formatted in a way that it can kind of be your companion guide to life, or so I hope.
I love that.
My other books are The Mountain Is You or The Pivot Year, which is 365 very brief daily meditations just for some brain food for the day.
I love that. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.